And you probably don't realize it, but something happened this morning that made your legs a little weaker. And yesterday, you did it again. And the day before that. These aren't dramatic moments. They're quiet and ordinary habits woven so deeply into your daily routine that you never question them. But after 60, your legs notice every single one. Right now, while you're watching this, your body is making decisions about your muscle tissue. And it's deciding whether to keep it strong or let it fade. And those decisions aren't just based on whether you exercise. They're based on dozens of small moments throughout your day that you never connected to leg strength. The chair you're sitting in matters. And how long you've been sitting matters. What you ate 3 hours ago matters. Even the shoes sitting by your front door are playing a role. Most people think weak legs happen suddenly. One day you're fine, the next day stairs feel impossible. But that's not how it works. And leg weakness after 60 is usually the result of years of small habits that chip away at your strength. So gradually you don't notice until you're struggling to stand up from a low couch or feeling unsteady on an uneven sidewalk. And here's what makes this particularly frustrating. Many of the habits that weaken your legs are things you were told were harmless or even healthy. Some were recommended by well-meaning friends, and others just became part of your routine because they seemed easier or more comfortable. But your legs have been quietly paying the price. Let's start with the most common one, because it's happening right now for most people watching this. Sitting. But not just sitting. And the way you sit, the surfaces you choose, and how long you stay there before you move again. After 60, prolonged sitting does something to your leg muscles that it didn't do when you were younger. It's not just about being inactive, and it's about what happens to the muscle fibers themselves when they're in a shortened, relaxed position for hours at a time. When you sit, your hip flexors shorten, your hamstrings relax, your glutes essentially turn off, and your quadriceps, and those big muscles on the front of your thighs, stop firing. In your younger years, your body could recover from this quickly. Stand up, walk around, and everything reactivated. But after 60, your muscles are less responsive. They need more frequent signals to stay strong. And when you sit for 2, 3, or 4 hours without standing, those muscles start to forget their job. There's a term for this, muscle amnesia. It sounds dramatic, but it's real. Your muscles need regular reminders to contract, to hold tension, to support your weight. And when they don't get those reminders, they atrophy faster than they would from simple aging alone. And the furniture you choose makes it worse. Deep, soft couches that let you sink in, recliners that do all the work for you, even office chairs designed for comfort. And they all reduce the subtle muscle engagement that used to happen naturally when you sat on firmer surfaces. But here's the part most people miss. It's not the sitting itself that causes the most damage. It's what you do when you stand up. Or rather, what you don't do. And most people, when they finally rise from a chair, let momentum do the work. They rock forward, use their arms to push off, and kind of lunge upward. The legs are just along for the ride. Over months and years, this becomes a habit. And when your legs stop being responsible for lifting your body weight, they weaken quickly. Think about the last time you stood up. Did you press through your heels, engage your thighs, and rise smoothly using just your leg strength? Or did your hands touch the armrests and maybe the coffee table and help you up? There's no judgment here. Most people do it. But every time you skip that leg-powered movement, you lose a small opportunity to maintain strength. Multiply that by 10, 15, 20 times a day, and then you've lost dozens of chances to keep your legs strong. Now let's talk about something that seems completely unrelated, but quietly weakens your legs more than almost anything else: dehydration. Not the severe kind that sends you to the hospital, the chronic and low-level dehydration that most people over 60 live with every single day without realizing it. As you age, your sense of thirst diminishes. You can be genuinely dehydrated and not feel thirsty at all. And when your muscles don't get enough water, and they can't function properly. Muscle tissue is about 75% water. When that percentage drops even slightly, your muscles lose strength, endurance, and the ability to repair themselves after activity. Your legs feel heavier, stairs feel harder, and you might think it's just age, but it's actually thirst you never felt. There's another layer to this. Dehydration affects your joints. The cartilage in your knees, hips, and ankles needs fluid to stay cushioned and lubricated. When you're chronically underhydrated, and that cartilage gets stiffer and less shock absorbent, so every step you take sends more stress into the surrounding muscles. Over time, this leads to compensation patterns. You start walking differently to avoid discomfort. You shift weight awkwardly, and you avoid certain movements, and your leg muscles weaken because they're no longer moving through their full natural range. But most people don't connect their achy knees or heavy-feeling legs to the fact that they only drank 1 glass of water all morning. And They think they need a new supplement or a different exercise routine. And meanwhile, the simplest solution is sitting right in front of them. Here's another habit that's so ordinary you'd never suspect it. Wearing the same comfortable shoes everywhere. Those soft and cushioned sneakers or supportive sandals that make your feet feel great. They're actually making your legs weaker. And it's not because they're bad shoes. It's because they do too much of the work for you. And your feet contain dozens of small muscles that are supposed to activate with every step, stabilizing your ankle, engaging your calves, and sending signals up the chain to your thighs and hips. But when your shoes have thick cushioning, rigid arch support, and motion control features, those small foot muscles stop working. The shoe does the stabilizing instead. Over time, this creates a weakening effect that travels all the way up your legs. You might notice that your balance isn't what it used to be, or that your calves feel weak when you try to stand on your toes, or that your ankles feel stiff. These aren't necessarily signs of aging. They're signs that your feet have been inside overly supportive shoes for so long that the muscles have quietly atrophied. Now, this doesn't mean you should throw out your shoes and walk barefoot everywhere. That would create different problems. But it does mean that varying your footwear, spending some time in flatter, less cushioned shoes around the house, and giving your feet a chance to work naturally can make a surprising difference in overall leg strength. Let's move to eating patterns, because this is where things get really interesting. You probably know that protein matters for muscle strength, but what you might not know is that the timing of your protein intake matters just as much as the amount. And most people over 60 are making the same mistake every single day. They skip protein at breakfast, maybe have a small amount at lunch, and then eat most of their protein at dinner. By the time that chicken or fish or beans hits your system, your body has already spent most of the day breaking down muscle tissue because it didn't have the amino acids it needed to maintain it. After 60, your body becomes less efficient at using protein. You need more of it, and you need it spread throughout the day to prevent muscle loss. When you go 12 or 14 hours from dinner to the next afternoon without significant protein, your legs are literally being cannibalized for amino acids. It's a slow process. You won't feel it happening. But over months and years, it adds up to noticeable weakness. And here's the part that surprises people. Even if you eat plenty of protein at dinner, your body can only use a certain amount at one time. The rest gets converted to energy or stored as fat. It doesn't sit around waiting to repair your muscles the next morning. So that big steak at night doesn't make up for the toast and coffee you had at breakfast. And there's also the issue of what you eat alongside your protein. If you're loading up on refined carbohydrates and sugars throughout the day, your body stays in a state of insulin resistance. That makes it even harder for your muscles to absorb and use the protein you do eat. So you could be eating enough protein on paper but still losing muscle because your body can't process it effectively. Now let's talk about something that happens so automatically you never think about it. Favoring one leg. Most people have a dominant side, you step up with the same leg. You stand with more weight on one hip. You get out of the car leading with the same foot every time. It feels natural, so you assume it's fine. But over years and decades, this creates a significant imbalance. One leg becomes noticeably stronger than the other. And the weaker leg? It keeps getting weaker because you keep unconsciously avoiding using it. Eventually, this leads to balance problems, hip discomfort, knee pain, and a much higher risk of falls. Because when you do need that weaker leg to catch you, it's not strong enough to respond. You can test this right now. Stand up and notice which leg feels more stable. Then try standing on one foot. Can you hold it equally long on both sides? Most people can't. And that imbalance didn't happen overnight. It happened through thousands of small repetitions where one leg did more work than the other. Here's a habit that seems health conscious but often backfires. Stretching. Now, stretching itself isn't bad, but the way most people stretch after 60 actually contributes to leg weakness. They focus entirely on flexibility and ignore strength. They stretch their hamstrings, hip flexors, and calves, trying to stay limber, and that's fine. But if you're only stretching and never challenging those muscles to work under tension, you end up with long, loose, weak muscles instead of strong, functional ones. Flexibility without strength is just floppiness. Your legs might be able to move through a big range of motion, but they can't support you effectively in that range. So you end up feeling unstable, even though you're technically flexible. What your legs actually need after 60 is a combination of mobility and strength through that mobility. Not one or the other. There's also a psychological habit that quietly weakens legs, and it's one nobody talks about. Preemptive caution. You start avoiding certain activities because you think they might be too hard or too risky. You take the elevator instead of the stairs. Not because you can't do it, but because you don't want to get tired. You ask someone else to carry the groceries, and not because they're too heavy, but because you're trying to be careful. Every time you avoid a physical challenge that you're actually capable of doing, you lose a chance to maintain your strength. And worse, you reinforce the belief that you're not strong enough. Over time, and this creates a cycle. You avoid more, you weaken further, and then the things you were avoiding actually do become too hard. Your brain and your muscles are in constant communication. When you repeatedly tell yourself that something is too difficult, and your brain starts to believe it. And it stops sending the strong signals your muscles need to perform. This isn't about positive thinking or motivation. It's about neuromuscular connection. The less you ask of your legs, the less they're able to give. And let's talk about temperature because this is one of the most overlooked factors. Spending too much time in cold environments quietly weakens your legs. When your muscles are cold, they contract less efficiently. Blood flow decreases. And if you're regularly sitting in air-conditioned rooms or spending time outside in cool weather without enough layers, your leg muscles are constantly operating below their optimal temperature. This doesn't mean you'll suddenly collapse, but it does mean your muscles are working harder to do simple tasks. They fatigue faster and they recover more slowly over time. This contributes to a general sense of heaviness and weakness that you might attribute to aging but is actually environmental. On the flip side, staying too warm for too long also creates problems. Sitting with your legs under heavy blankets or near heaters for hours reduces circulation. Your muscles need fresh blood flow to stay healthy. When that blood flow is restricted or sluggish, waste products build up, and oxygen delivery decreases and muscle tissue starts to degrade. Now let's address something that affects almost everyone, but rarely gets mentioned in conversations about leg strength: poor sleep, specifically poor quality sleep and irregular sleep schedules. And your muscles repair and rebuild themselves while you sleep. If you're not getting enough deep sleep, or if your sleep is fragmented, your legs never get the recovery time they need. After 60, growth hormone production drops significantly. And this hormone is essential for muscle repair, and the majority of it is released during deep sleep. If you're waking up multiple times a night, going to bed at wildly different times, or only sleeping 5 or 6 hours, and your legs are being deprived of the rebuilding process they desperately need, you might be exercising, eating protein, staying hydrated. But if your sleep is poor, all of that effort is undermined. Your muscles break down faster than they can rebuild. And you wake up feeling weaker than you should. There's also a habit involving medication that many people don't connect to leg weakness. Certain common prescriptions have side effects that affect muscle strength. Statins, for example, can cause muscle pain and weakness in some people. Diuretics can lead to electrolyte imbalances that interfere with muscle contraction. Even some blood pressure medications affect circulation to the legs. This isn't a suggestion to stop taking prescribed medication, but it is worth knowing that some of the weakness you're experiencing might be a side effect rather than inevitable aging. And sometimes, a conversation with your doctor about adjusting dosage or trying a different medication can make a noticeable difference. And let's talk about something that happens in the kitchen: eating while distracted. It sounds unrelated to leg strength, but hear this out. When you eat while watching television, scrolling on your phone, or reading, you eat faster. You chew less, and your body doesn't properly signal fullness or nutrient absorption. This leads to poor digestion, which means the nutrients you're eating, including that important protein, aren't being absorbed as effectively. You might be eating enough on paper, but your body isn't actually getting what it needs. And your legs, which need a steady supply of amino acids, vitamins, and minerals, slowly weaken because they're essentially underfed at a cellular level. There's also the habit of skipping meals or eating irregularly. And maybe you're not hungry in the morning, so you wait until noon. Then you get busy and don't eat again until evening. Your body interprets irregular eating as a scarcity signal. And when it thinks resources are scarce, it prioritizes vital organs and lets muscle tissue break down. Your legs are not considered essential for immediate survival, so they're among the first things sacrificed. Another quiet habit is using handles and railings unnecessarily. Handrails exist for safety, and you should absolutely use them when you need them. But if you're gripping the railing tightly on every single staircase, even when you feel stable, you're offloading work that your legs should be doing. Your arms are helping support your weight. Your core isn't engaging, and your leg muscles aren't being challenged. Over time, this becomes a dependency. You feel like you can't do stairs without holding on, even though the real issue is that your legs have weakened because you stopped asking them to do the work. And let's talk about footwear again, but from a different angle. wearing shoes indoors all the time. It seems like a minor choice, but when you're always in shoes, your feet never get the sensory feedback they need from the ground. This affects your proprioception which is your body's ability to sense where it is in space. When proprioception declines, your balance suffers. And when your balance suffers, your legs have to work harder to keep you stable. But instead of getting stronger, they become tense and fatigued. And you start moving more cautiously, you tense up. And that tension, over time, leads to weakness and discomfort. Walking barefoot or in socks on safe indoor surfaces helps your feet send accurate signals to your brain. And this improves balance and allows your leg muscles to work more naturally. It's a small thing, but it makes a difference. Here's a habit that's completely mental but has real physical effects. Negative self-talk about your body. And when you repeatedly say things like, "I'm too old for that," or "my legs just don't work like they used to," you're not just expressing frustration. You're programming your nervous system to limit what it asks of your muscles. And your brain controls your muscles through neural pathways. When you consistently think of yourself as weak or incapable, those pathways become less active. The signals your brain sends to your legs become weaker, and your actual physical strength decreases, not because of age, but because of belief. This isn't about pretending you're 20 again. It's about recognizing that the language you use about your body influences how your body performs. When you shift that language even slightly, your physical capacity often shifts too. And let's address something practical that happens every day: how you get dressed. If you sit down to put on your pants and shoes every morning, you're missing an opportunity to challenge your balance and leg strength. And standing on one leg to put on pants or shoes requires stability, core engagement, and coordination. It's a functional exercise disguised as a daily task, but most people sit because it's easier and safer. And that's fine if you genuinely need to. But if you're sitting out of habit rather than necessity, you're losing dozens of small strength-building moments every week. There's also the habit of rushing. Moving quickly through your day without paying attention to how you're moving. You hurry up from a chair, and you rush through doorways. You take stairs as fast as possible to get them over with. All of this creates sloppy movement patterns where your legs aren't working efficiently. You're using momentum and compensation instead of controlled strength. Slowing down, even by a few seconds, allows your muscles to engage properly. It improves your balance, and it gives your brain time to coordinate movement correctly. Speed might feel productive, but it's quietly robbing you of strength. Let's talk about something environmental. Spending all your time on flat, even surfaces. Your home is probably flat, stores are flat. And while that feels safe and comfortable, it means your legs never have to adapt to uneven ground. In nature, humans walked on rocks, hills, soft earth, and an unpredictable terrain. That constant adaptation kept leg muscles strong and responsive. Now everything is smooth and predictable, and your legs have become lazy because they never have to react or adjust. You don't need to hike mountains, but occasionally walking on grass, gravel, or gentle slopes gives your legs the kind of challenge they're designed for. It wakes up stabilizing muscles that have been asleep for years. Here's a habit involving rest. Not resting enough between activities. You might think that staying constantly busy is good for you. But if you never give your legs time to recover, they stay in a state of low-level fatigue. And fatigued muscles don't get stronger. They break down. Rest isn't laziness, it's when your body rebuilds. And if you're on your feet all day without breaks, or if you're doing too much activity without recovery days, your legs are being worn down instead of built up. On the other hand, resting too much creates the opposite problem. Sitting for entire afternoons, and spending whole days without walking more than a few steps. Your legs need regular activity, but they also need recovery. The balance between the two is what maintains strength. Now let's talk about something surprisingly important: how you breathe. Most people breathe shallowly, using only the top part of their lungs. This reduces oxygen delivery to your muscles, and your leg muscles, especially during activity, need a lot of oxygen to function well. When you breathe deeply, using your diaphragm, you increase oxygen intake. This improves endurance, reduces fatigue, and helps muscles recover faster. Something as simple as taking a few deep breaths before standing up or climbing stairs can make those activities feel easier. Let's address another common habit: waiting until you feel pain before you rest. You keep walking, standing, or moving until your legs hurt, then you stop. But by the time you feel pain, you've already pushed past the point where your muscles could work effectively. You've moved into compensation and strain. Learning to notice fatigue before it becomes pain allows you to rest sooner, recover faster, and avoid the breakdowns that lead to long-term weakness. Here's something that happens gradually: losing ankle mobility. Your ankles are supposed to flex and extend with every step. But if you're always in supportive shoes, sitting for long periods, or not moving through a full range of motion, your ankles stiffen. And when your ankles don't move well, your knees and hips have to compensate. This creates stress and weakness throughout your entire leg. And simple ankle circles, pointing and flexing your feet, or just spending a few minutes moving your ankles throughout the day can preserve mobility and prevent that upward chain of compensation. Let's talk about sunlight. Lack of sunlight affects your vitamin D levels, and vitamin D is essential for muscle function. Without enough of it, your muscles become weaker and more prone to pain. Many people over 60 spend most of their time indoors, especially in winter, and their leg strength quietly declines, not because they're inactive, but because they're deficient in a nutrient their muscles desperately need. Even 15 minutes of sunlight on your skin a few times a week can make a significant difference. And if sunlight isn't available, and a conversation with your doctor about vitamin D supplementation might be worth having. Here's a habit that seems responsible but sometimes backfires: relying too much on assistive devices before you actually need them. Canes, walkers, and grabbers are incredibly helpful when they're necessary. But if you start using them preemptively, out of fear rather than need, they can accelerate the very weakness you're trying to avoid. Your legs need to be challenged to stay strong. And if you remove all challenge too early, they weaken faster. The key is honest assessment. Use assistance when it truly helps. But don't let fear convince you that you're weaker than you are. Let's talk about sugar again, because it deserves more attention. And high sugar intake doesn't just affect your weight or energy. It creates inflammation throughout your body, including in your muscles and joints. That inflammation makes movement uncomfortable, which makes you move less, which weakens your legs further. And reducing sugar isn't about perfection, but being mindful of how much you're consuming, especially from hidden sources like sauces, drinks, and processed foods, can reduce inflammation and make movement feel easier. Here's something subtle: always choosing comfort. And the softest chair, the easiest route, the least effort. Comfort feels good in the moment, but it removes the small challenges that keep you strong. Your body adapts to what you ask of it. If you only ask for comfort, it gives you a body that can't handle discomfort. And life, and especially as you age, requires some discomfort. Choosing slight discomfort strategically, like standing instead of sitting sometimes, or taking the longer route occasionally, keeps your body adaptable and your legs strong. Let's address alcohol. And even moderate drinking affects muscle recovery and sleep quality. Alcohol disrupts deep sleep, dehydrates you, and interferes with protein synthesis. If you're having a drink or two every evening, and it might be quietly undermining all the other good things you're doing for your leg strength. Again, this isn't about eliminating everything enjoyable. It's about awareness. Understanding that certain habits have costs allows you to make informed choices. Now, and here's something encouraging. Despite all these habits, your legs are incredibly responsive. Even after years of weakness, they can regain strength surprisingly quickly when you start changing these patterns. Muscle tissue wants to be strong. It's designed to adapt. And even small changes, consistently applied, create noticeable improvements. You don't have to overhaul your entire life overnight. Pick one habit from this conversation. Maybe it's drinking more water. Maybe it's standing up from chairs without using your hands. And maybe it's adding protein to breakfast. Start there. Let that become normal. Then add another. Your legs have been quietly weakening because of accumulated small habits. They'll quietly strengthen again through accumulated small changes. The process works both ways. And here's the truth that's easy to forget. Your legs aren't just about mobility. They're about independence, confidence, freedom, the ability to go where you want, when you want, without hesitation or fear. And every small habit that strengthens your legs is actually protecting something much bigger. It's protecting your ability to live the life you want. So tomorrow morning when you get out of bed, pay attention. Notice how you move. Notice what you reach for, what you avoid, and what feels automatic. Those automatic moments are where your strength is either built or lost. And now that you see them, you have the power to change them. Your legs are listening. They've been listening all along. And they're ready to get stronger the moment you are.